Thank you everyone for joining. It looks like we have quite a crew coming in, which is very exciting. And we are incredibly excited to have you all here today. My name is Dan Casey Dunn. I work for WildChina, and I'm incredibly excited today to help facilitate this panel. I'll go ahead and introduce our speakers to start, and then we'll do a brief welcome video from Jane Goodall, who works with Roots and Shoots, which is our partner organization today. And then we'll jump back to our speakers to have them introduce themselves. So we'll start with Jane and we'll go from there. But today we have Shelley Bragg, who is a co-founder of Good Travel, which is a sustainability focused travel company founded in New Zealand 8 years ago. And they consult on how to help travelers travel sustainably, and then also how to help companies travel sustainably. And we'll jump to her in a moment. We have Mei Zhang, the founder of WildChina, an expert on travel in China, on travel throughout China, and then also, as our company motto is based on sustainability travel within China as well, and how to travel sustainably, and how that relates to China, and we'll get to her in a moment as well. And then finally, we have Huang here, who works at China House, which is a global think tank based on helping Chinese students get into sustainable development and helping them on their journey to see what it looks like to travel sustainably and live sustainably as well. And so with that, we're going to jump to a video where we have from Jane Goodall, where she has some prepared remarks for today, and we are very, very excited. So I'm going to go ahead and play that.
Hello, this is Jane Goodall. I'm really pleased to be invited to speak at this important event, an event that's encouraging young people, especially young women, to travel abroad in a sustainable way. My story of my travels and adventures began at a very young age. I was born loving animals, and I was lucky in having a very supportive mother who encouraged this love of animals. When I was young, there was no television, and so I learned from books and from nature. And when I was 10 years old, I discovered a little book called Tarzan of the Apes. I think you know that in China. And I fell passionately in love with this glorious Lord of the Jungle. And that's when my dream began. I will grow up, go to Africa, live with wild animals, and write books about them. But how would I get there? First of all, I had to get a job because we had very little money. And it was a boring secretarial job, but it brought in a way for living. And then I got an invitation from a school friend, and she invited me for a holiday to Kenya in East Africa, which was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. But how to get there? I couldn't save up money in London where I was working. So I came home to Bournemouth in the UK, which is where I'm speaking to you from now. In fact, behind me, some of the books that I read as a child. And so I worked as a waitress around the corner over there, and it was jolly hard work, but I saved up all my wages and all my tips. And after about 5 months, I had enough money to go to Africa. In those days, I traveled by boat because there were no planes flying back and forth. It was a very different world. And I met the famous paleontologist, Dr. Louis Leakey. I went to see him to talk about if there was anything I could do with animals. And he was impressed by how much I knew about African animals just from reading books about them. And he gave me this amazing opportunity of going to study not any animal, but the one most like us, the chimpanzee. I had the most wonderful years of my life out in the rainforest, learning about the chimpanzee group, their personalities, their use and making of tools, the way they behave like us, kissing, embracing, holding hands, patting one another, males swaggering, competing for dominance. They even have a kind of war, but they can also show love and kindness. And it was obvious how like us they were. Well, I could have stayed there forever, out in the rainforest, learning about the interconnection of all living things. But I learned in 1986 that right across Africa, Forests were being destroyed by logging and mining and developments, and populations of people and livestock were growing, and chimpanzee numbers were decreasing, and they're susceptible to all our diseases. We were moving further into their homes. I knew I had to try and do something to help. So I started a program to help the local people because they were living in such poverty and they'd run out of good farmland. And so we started the Jane Goodall Institute, started a program to improve their lives, help them find ways of living without destroying their forest, because all the trees around the little park where I studied the chimps, all the trees had gone. And traveling around the world, I was learning more about all the harm that we're inflicting everywhere, building dams, destroying forests, polluting rivers and oceans. And not surprising, I was meeting young people who were losing hope. And so I began the Roots and Shoots program that I know you'll hear more about later. But we're living in such difficult times, you know, with this pandemic. Then we've got the climate crisis. We've got the extinction of so many plant and animal species. And we've got social problems all around the world. And so this is why it's really important for young women, as well as young men, to go out and become involved in conservation programs in different parts of the world. People need help badly. And together we can make a difference. Together we will make a difference, and that includes you. And just remember, finally, every day that you live, you make some impact on the planet. You have a choice as to what you buy and eat and wear. And ask yourself if it harmed the environment, if it was cruel to animals, if it's cheap because of unequal wages paid somewhere. And if those things are true, then don't buy the product. We all can make a difference. And if we all make a difference, then there is hope for our future and the future of our children. Have a wonderful event. Goodbye.
Fantastic. So on that note, with those wonderful and inspiring words, and just as a reminder today, our event is co-run with Roots and Shoots, Jane Goodall's foundation in Shanghai. And all of the money that was received for donations to attend the event today will go for Roots and Shoots. And at the end of the event as well, we'll show a little bit, give you a little bit more about Roots and Shoots' mission, and help you as well to buy any of their incredible merchandise, which supports all of their efforts to empower China's youth through outdoor education. And so with that, we'll turn it over for introductions, and I'll introduce our panelists one more time because they deserve probably several more introductions. And we'll start with Mei Zhang. Mei is not only my boss here at WildChina, she is the founder of WildChina. She holds an MBA from Harvard Business School. She is the author of Travels Through Dali with the Side of Ham, and she is noted in fundamentally changing the way that organizations traveled in China and that travel in China looks like. And so with that, Mei, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dan. And I'm so grateful to have this incredibly inspiring message from Dr. Jane Goodall. I don't know if you noticed, but I shut my camera off quickly. I ran out because I went to collect my 12-year-old girl. I'm like, you gotta watch this, you gotta watch this. Inspiration for the young women start really early, and I think it's a great initiative. So I'll just say a little bit about myself. I'm from Yunnan, and some of you may know Dali. That's where I grew up. That's why I wrote the book about Dali. I'm a mother of 3 kids. The 12-year-old is my youngest. I like distance running, reading, and cooking and all that. And I have been a traveler my entire life. And I believe all these activities are sustainable, and they are in a way sustaining my life, making it meaningful. And I'll just say a little bit of my story of how I started traveling and how travel changed me. That was after the business school. I went into consulting with McKinsey and saved up, like Jane, saved up a little bit of money, paid off the tuition, and then went on a 6-month sabbatical by myself throughout Asia and South Africa, Europe, Nepal, Tibet, and all of those beautiful, stunning areas. And then was called back to do a study with McKinsey for Yunnan government to look at building a national park in the region. And it was for the first time, travel gave me a completely different set of eyes to see a destination that's so familiar to me, and now I treasure it very differently. I realized the home is so incredibly fragile and beautiful, and if we don't tread lightly, it can easily go south. And that's how I was inspired by both the traveling and my studies to decide to start WildChina, to really change the way we travel. I wanted us to all connect with local culture much more deeply. I wanted to create the kind of meaningful, deep connection that both inspires the traveler, changes the lives of both the visitor and the residents in a much more positive way. And that was the beginning of it all. But the journey is carried on by many, many, many of my colleagues. So I'll leave it there, and we'll talk more.
Fantastic. Thank you, May. So our next panelist, we'll turn it over to Shelley Bragg. Shelley is the co-founder of Good Travel, an organization founded in New Zealand that consults on sustainable traveling for people interested in doing a better job in their travel sustainably, and then also for organizations interested in doing a better job in sustainable travel. Shelley, we'll turn it over to you for what sustainability means to you and what the topic today, how it inspires you.
Great, thank you. Well, firstly, thank you so much for including me. It's so great to be a part of this event, and for everyone that's signed on listening. We really appreciate being here, and I hope that we can give some tangible advice. So yeah, so I'm Shelley. I'm from South Africa originally. I'm currently sitting in the US, and over the past decade, I've worked in Asia, I was in Shanghai, China for 8 years, and then also in Bangkok, Thailand. So, and then of course, Good Travel is registered in New Zealand. So I've created quite an international life and career over the past decade or two. But I wouldn't say that my path there was at all linear. It's been quite a journey in itself. But a little bit about Good Travel. Good Travel's been going since 2013, and we believe in sustainable and responsible tourism, and we really believe in making an impact in the 3 areas of sustainability in terms of community, economy, and environment. So we work with partners all over the world, and pre-COVID, we led trips all over the world, really helping travelers. We want to inform travelers so that they can make choices on how to be more sustainable and responsible when they travel. Now, we also are a company founded all by women, 4 women founders from 4 different countries. And we found each other through travel. So in many ways, travel and getting abroad shaped my life and also my impact. I think that first experience happened for me when I went overseas for the first time and really learned, it changed my worldview completely, seeing how different communities live, learning more about my own country, South Africa, from a different perspective. And I realized then just the power of travel as a form of education, which is something we really believe in Good Travel as well. I think that, Jane just made Dr. Jane, some wonderful, inspiring points there of our power as an individual, which we believe in at Good Travel as well. And also just, how she got her start in her career by just taking chances and really maybe finding some paths that don't seem like they're on the right track, something just to get her to where she wants to go, but maybe not exactly what she was wanting to do, like waitressing and doing these other jobs. And I think that was similar for me in terms of, I knew I wanted to get into sustainability. I knew I wanted to get into, I knew I wanted to have experience working abroad, but my path there had to be going through different routes and working other jobs and finding and taking whatever opportunities I could. And I think for youth looking to get into these fields, I think it's important just to try and connect with as many people as you can, like-minded people that are in that space that you want to get into, and to take whatever opportunities you can to meet new people, to gain experience, to break into the industry. And I think some of the most valuable things for me have been where I take opportunities to learn as opposed to earn. You know, so I volunteer, internships, whatever can really help you get your foot in the door, I think will be so invaluable. But yes, so that's sort of a summary of myself and how I've ended up in the life that I am, and I look forward to answering any other questions later to that too.
Fantastic, thank you, Shelley. And our final panelist today is Wang, and Wang works for China House, which is he is the founder of China House, which works to cultivate global citizens among China's youth. Wang will speak a little bit more about what China House does, but it helps students take their research projects that are outward facing throughout the world and helps them turn them into sustainable focused projects that helps China's sustainable development around the world. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Wang.
Thank you. Hello, nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Huang Hongxiang. You can call me Huang, or you can call me Hong, like Hong Kong without Kong. That's easier to remember. So for me, traveling and sustainable development, they have actually changed my life a lot. And it all started from like 2011. At that time, I was still doing my master degree at Columbia University. My master program was about international development. So due to some coincidence, at the end of 2011, I traveled to Ecuador to do research about Chinese mining companies and the impact on local environment. And started from that, I got very interested in this topic of like the relationship between China and global sustainable development. As I later on, I traveled to Peru, I traveled to Brazil to all try to understand the Chinese mining, Chinese hydropower project, Chinese oil project, and their local environmental impact. And then later on, I went to Africa. I did research about, for example, the ivory trade and rhino horn trade with the Chinese connection, like Chinese mining project, and so on and so on. So from all those traveling, I got to realize that today, like globally, there have been many sustainable development challenges that are very related to China and the role of like China playing especially in the global South. And I also realized that young Chinese people like myself actually could play a very unique role, because on one hand, we can talk to all the Chinese stakeholders, we can understand the situation in China easily. On the other hand, we speak English, we are more open-minded, we'll be able to communicate with NGOs, Western media, local communities, and so on, which means we can somehow create a bridge between China and the outside world. So in 2014, I started this organization called China House in Kenya. Essentially, what we do is very simple. We bring young Chinese people from China we bring them to travel to different places in the world, like Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, and so on. And then together, we'll do some research about local sustainable development challenges. For example, about anti-FGM, female genital mutilation in Kenya, for example, about orangutan conservation in Indonesia, for example, about like Chinese mining company in some countries, and so on. And right now, later on we move our base back to Shanghai, and then from Shanghai here, we are bringing young Chinese people everywhere. Like in China, for example, we take them to Xinjiang to understand the situation of like gender equality, and then to see how different kind of like ethnicities can communicate to understand themselves better, each other better. For example, we take students to Guangzhou to understand the situation of Africans who are living in Guangzhou and the racism that they have been like suffering, and trying to see is there anything that we can do to help them. For example, we take students to Yunnan to understand human-elephant conflict there, and to see whether technology and so on and community development can help change the situation. We bring students, for example, to Ecuador to understand Chinese oil company and the environmental impact and so on. So what I can see is that when we bring more young Chinese people into global sustainable development, on one hand, they will be able to create quite some like improvement for the general situation for the whole world. On the other hand, these young Chinese people themselves could be very important, because over the past 6 years, we have seen a lot of young Chinese, they get to learn about sustainable development, they become very passionate about it, and then later on, some of them, they actually graduate and then work in some NGO, like to work on sustainable development. And also related to this topic, today what I want to say is that 80% of my colleagues and my interns and my students, they are all young women. And I guess that's why I'm related to today's topic. But yeah, that's basically our introduction. Nice to meet you all.
Fantastic. What a wonderful introduction, Wong. So on that note, I'm going to let the attendees know throughout the panel today, throughout everyone talking, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the question and answer, the Q&A section. You should be able to see it on the bottom, where you can type any of your questions, and I can see those, and only we can see those throughout, and we'll try to get to as many of those questions at the end of the session as we can. So if anything comes up, please feel free to ask questions. Prior to today's session, we went to a number of the attendees that had registered and asked if they had questions. And we have a number of questions for each of the panelists from our attendees today. And so we're going to start with Shelley. Shelley, we had, and I think that if May could comment a bit on the end of this question as well, that would be great. We had a student, she's getting a graduate degree in sustainability from Hong Kong University. She's currently teaching English in Hong Kong. She's worried that she has no connections in development or sustainability, both areas that she's interested in taking her English teaching career into. What kind of first steps should she be taking during her graduate studies? Is there anything that she should do while she's in graduate school to have a better idea for when she completes graduate school getting into the field? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so I recommend, I think having some experience and having a network are going to be the most helpful parts. So I would seek out any organizations in Hong Kong or even abroad where they're working in a space that you're interested in. And even if they don't have opportunities listed on their website, I would reach out to them and just say, this is who I am, this is what I'm studying, I just want to gain experience. Is there something I can do to support? Can I shadow someone? You might find you have more luck with the smaller organizations, because generally there's more flexibility there and they need more support. And then I would just say, even if it's just connecting to people who are in those companies and just building up your network, I think that's invaluable, because then the minute you finish, you can say, I've worked in this space. It'll also help you, I think, really determine which space you'd like to work in and where you'd like to focus your time once you finish. But having the network and having some experience, I think, would be very helpful.
Yeah, Daniel wanted me to chime in a little bit. I completely agree with Shelley. I think reaching out to people, building up your network is crucial. Some of the best interns that I've helped to place were people who just reached out to me randomly and saying, like, I'm interested in doing anything in a remote area of China, just getting to know the culture or whatever. And it happens, we work with so many villagers who are building B&Bs and in remote location. One of this young men is a Tibetan in the Catholic Tibetan area in Yunnan, in Binzhongluo, Dimaluo, that area. He emailed me, or he called me and said, can you send me an intern to help me set up Western breakfast? Voila, here's two people who were recently in touch with me. Immediately, this incredible opportunity comes into play, right? But one thing I do want to say, two other things I do want to say. One is, do take a leap of faith sometimes. If it's an area that highly, highly interests you, like Jane did, Africa, travel there, spend the time, travel there, and talk to people there. You have much better chance to run into Huang's people on the ground there. And secondly is build up your skill set. Know how to do an elevator pitch of yourself. If I'm saying I'm an intern, I want to intern, what am I good at? Or if you say, I'm really a good photographer, I'll take you, email me. I'm really good in social media, right? That sort of thing is like people would value your skills. So try it. It's great.
Some really good answers. Juan, I want to just follow up on that question for a little bit with you. As someone who helps place people that are kind of at that earlier stage in their careers, is there an email that you are more receptive to? Is there a tone? I know a lot of, especially women, struggle to put themselves out there in situations, right? And as an average white guy, right, I have the confidence to send those emails. But is there an email tone that you appreciate or that is easier for you to deal with when you initially receive it?
Is this question for me?
Yes, yes,
Sorry.
for you. Yeah, since you place a lot of students abroad and in these situations.
Yeah, sure. So what I may want to say, and also I think it's related to the previous question as well, is that at the very beginning, when I was interested in sustainable development, I thought it was only about like having a good heart and trying to do good things as a volunteer. But later on, as I studied at like international development, I got to know like it's like doing international development work is actually very professional. And I think this is what nowadays is still quite missing, especially in China, while more and more young people are interested in sustainable development, or as we call it here in China, 公益, but they do not know that you need professional skills and so on. And when we're talking about professional skills and so on, like we are talking about knowledge, about NGO, about development, about conservation, we're talking about skills such as communication and research. And then it comes to your question. So for example, if someone write an email to anyone, like to us, or trying to write an email to an NGO and so on, first, this person, it would be great if they can do some research to understand like what this organization is all about. He or she may actually need to check the website to maybe even see some bio on LinkedIn of the staff that they are emailing to. They may need to do some research about like what is conservation, or what is community development, or what is gender equality, so that they actually know like what they are talking about. And they need to have better communication skill, which means essentially they need to try to understand, like they need to actually try to think about like why this person should spend their time to actually respond to you, like why he or she should. And all these kind of skills is actually during our program, what we are trying to teach our young Chinese students, because in our program, a lot of the time they need to reach out to local NGOs and so on, and trying to get an interview, trying to get a meeting like for some partnership and so on. And what we have been telling them is that you need to be first trying to be useful to them, or you should, or say, and you need to try to be likable to them. For example, if you are writing to a local NGO, try to think like what you can do to help them, maybe help them with their promotion, help them with their fundraising and so on. And then while you write an email, you need to sound professional. You need to like look like you are someone that are very polite and very like kind and very clear in communication. You have done a lot of work beforehand so that you are not wasting people's time and so on. I believe all those kind of like small skills are very important in people writing an email, or I would say generally like reaching out and trying to get people to cooperate with you.
Fantastic. I think that's some excellent advice. So our next question we're going to start with May. May, we had a question from a young professional in Shanghai. She works in marketing right now currently, but she's interested in taking her company, which is fairly small, and helping them get into sustainability, helping them take some sustainable practices, so that she could not only potentially do that in the future, but that she has some on-the-ground experience in her company. What steps could she take to encourage her job to make a more concerted effort at sustainability in the day-to-day? And what can she do if she wants to add more sustainability work in the future to her resume, and potentially move into working in sustainability full-time? What would you recommend as someone who obviously runs a large company?
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if I understood the question exactly. There are two different scenarios, right? If this person is in a decision-making position, that's much easier, right? Because if you know the directions you want to go, you care about sustainability can be defined in so many different ways. Like Huang is talking about more mining or impact economy on local community. And Shelley may be talking about environmental conservation, and I may be talking about sustainable community culture. And in the office environment, we may be talking about recycling the waste paper or whatever it is. So for a boss, it's easy to see which areas you really want to drive that is meaningful to your organization. and obviously forming a committee that has people who share the interest to really lead it, have everyone in the company embrace it, then it will become a bigger movement. Now, for someone who's more in a starting position, a more junior position, this task can come across as daunting. Like the whole mountain above my head does not want to move, and I'm the only one who's interested. How do I make a difference, right? And I'll give you some examples that I have seen in WildChina. I'm not sure if you, Dan, if you met this young lady. She was really interested in understanding plants, species, and hiking. And so what she started to do is cultivating her own interest. She would spend all her weekends out hiking around the Great Wall, documenting all the plants, and then she would write her own blogs. And every Friday when we have happy hour or something, she would volunteer and say, like, I can share a new hiking route. I can share a new photo collection of spring flowers or best places to go birding. And so she brings her personal passion into work environment in reaching others before she made any sort of professional demand to corporate change direction to follow the way I want to go. No, it was like influenced by behavior. And later on, people realized, oh, this is her passion, and anything in that direction, the boss will think about it a little more, and any projects in that direction will go towards her. And you just never know. 99% of the time, it's about showing up. If you're passionate about it, keep at it. It will have an impact. I'm sure Huang and Shelley may have different things to add.
I wanted to follow up. So I want to follow up with Shelley, especially as well. Shelley, for someone who helps people consult on making their travel sustainable, to add to this question, what's the most important thing someone can do when they're thinking about traveling sustainably? And then also early on in their career, is there a focus area within sustainability that you would recommend?
A focus area within sustainability, I think, like May's saying, I think it really becomes which area you're most passionate about, because that's probably where you're going to put the energy. And I think just to the point of talking about sustainability and maybe trying to move others or organizations along that journey to sustainability too, from the marketing perspective. I myself, that's my background, is marketing. And so what I found is really helpful, and also when we talk about, when we try and make change within tourism to be more sustainable, we really look at almost the marketing angle in terms of, if we can show tourism providers how important it is for travelers that they want sustainable tourism, that's going to improve their business, then they're going to shift. They're more likely to shift and say, okay, I need to make sure that my business is more sustainable because that's what my market wants. That's what my clients want. And I think the same thing for some organizations. If it's showing that really the being more sustainable is going to improve the perception of the brand and the company, that's also a very valuable talking point to try and move that thinking along.
Great. And one follow-up that I think for everyone who will be interested, I know I am, for people in their travel, when we all can travel again at some unknown point in the future, which we all cannot wait for, what is the most important thing that we think about when it comes to traveling sustainably?
So I think the most important, so we try and focus on 3 areas, which is, okay, what's the impact on the environment? What's the impact on the local economy? And what's the impact on the communities? So for our travelers, we want them just to consider those 3 areas. And I think the most important thing that anyone can do is just really do the research before they travel, paying attention to those areas and ask the questions, of the providers, of the companies they're using, of the activities that they choose. Like, what is my impact going to be as a traveler in these spaces? And what's happened to the tourism industry of COVID is really terrible. And there's this chance to also try and build back more sustainably. There's almost this clean slate there. And so we feel hopeful that as travel comes back, it will be in a more sustainable way.
Thank you, Shai. And then Hong, to jump to you, to back to the question we originally asked May, for people young in their careers who aren't perhaps working in sustainability, but would like to move in that direction, what would you recommend? I know you're talking about building skill sets and researching. What skill set would you recommend that someone who is in a job focus on in that job beyond just the general knowledge of the NGO landscape?
So in our work, and because our the young people we're taking out, usually they are most of them, they are like undergrad students and high school students. So we have actually met a lot of them. And what I would say in general for the beginner who are interested in sustainable development, there's always one sentence that I will share with them. Many of these young people will ask me a question about what should I do and how should I volunteer and so on. And then what I would do is what I think sometimes may sound a little controversial. I never encourage people to start with volunteering. So usually what I would say is that don't begin with volunteering, begin with research and learning, because only if you spend enough time and actually you have the capacity to do research and understand the situation and the problems, then you will be able to become a qualified volunteer to actually make some useful difference. So when it comes to skills, what I would say one of the most important skill is the skill to research and to learn the situation, including like how to do a depth research, like which is actually related to a lot of like what people are teaching in academic situation, like how to see different source, how to do like information triangulation and so on, and then how to do field research, how can you actually do a good interview, how can you design actually a qualified survey and so on and so on. I would say skill to do research and then skill to do communication. These two skills are what I see as most important for the beginner, like when they're interested in this area, because only with the skill to research, they will be able to understand what is sustainable development and which area they're interested in. And then what is conservation, for example, if they're interested in conservation, and then what can I do to eventually get into conservation like career and so on. All these type of things, they need them to have like really good research skill. And also with communication skill that would help them to actually get people to talk to them so that they can do interview to understand the situation. They will be able to reach out to organizations that they may want to volunteer in or intern in or eventually work in and so on. So I would say these two skills are what I see as most important and also most missing right now if we are talking about young Chinese students.
Fantastic. That's a great answer. So we had another question prepared, and hopefully we'll get back to it. But we have such a good question from one of the attendees that I have to jump to our Q&A section. And so we're going to start with, we'll start with May for this answer. But the attendee says, I'm a senior graduating from the University of California, Los Angeles this year with a degree in marine biology. Congratulations on graduating with, hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm sure if you're here, you're going to graduate. With COVID leading to the cancellation of many internships and field work opportunities in the past year, entering the workforce in a conservation field where research and field experience, like Hong was talking about, is very important, is really daunting. As a woman in STEM, it is also difficult to develop the confidence to apply to programs and jobs that you may feel unqualified for. Is there any advice for people in the very beginning of their career journey? I'm particularly interested in working in a career which combines travel and conservation education to young students. So May, we'll jump to you to start answering this fantastic question.
It truly is a fantastic question, and is the name pronounced correct, Lucy? Congratulations. I think it's amazing. It's impressive that you are graduating from UCLA, a wonderful school, and wonderful opportunities ahead of you. When I hear this question, I put myself in your shoes. I always think, back then, what would I have done? First, probably I would say, open up your mind not to limit to more academia conservation field, because you're so early, you're at the very beginning of your career, that any skills you learn will add to your portfolio of capabilities. And you never know, even if it's a job, I don't know, delivering mail, or recording a podcast of marine mammal sound, or whatever it is, moving the equipment. I'm sort of going way out of the box and think any job you can get, I would take it. And do not worry about, oh, I'm a UCLA graduate student or something. For me, having the Harvard Business School MBA very early on, I was very young. I got my degree at 25. It was a golden weight shackle because you felt like, oh, I can only do jobs that is appropriate to this resume. And I'm sure Huang can relate to that as well. Just chuck all that outside the window because you're so early on, experiment and have fun with it. And if you are if you want to pursue the marine front, pick the island of your choice, pick your beach of choice, and just go there. Maybe you're working in bars, whatever it is. Let sort of the opportunities take you. Of course, don't be safe. Don't worry your mother.
Great answer. Thank you, May. Shelley, can we jump to you? And Shelley, could you speak a little bit as well as to being a young woman early in your career? Is there any advice you have to build that confidence to jump out of your comfort zone?
Yeah, I love what May touched on there as well. I think, you know, I'm a firm believer in our ability to do multiple things at once. And sometimes you have to work at a job that's, you know, bringing in money, paying your bills, and also giving you experience in one way or another. And on the side, you're building your passion projects and you're working in the spaces you're most passionate about until you can find the time where those merge, I think, and when you can focus all your energy on your passion. And I think that for each person will be different depending on where they are and what opportunities come their way and, you know, what other limitations they might have. But I think something May also touched on in the intro is, you know, we all have unique strengths, and whatever we've experienced in our life and within our early career or within our studies, and you're going to gain valuable skills. And so it's about figuring out, okay, where are my skills and my strengths right now? And how can those add value to these spaces that I want to go in? And then just being able to practice communicating that, which I think Hong touched on earlier as well, just communicating, I am very good at this, I can help you in this area, I think, you know, is there room for that? And so I think it's don't undervalue what you already know, the skill set you already have, and what value you can bring to a project or an organization.
I think that's a fantastic answer. And Hong, do you have anything, what do you have to add? I was not going to say, do you have anything to add? Because I know you will, and I'm very curious to hear what you would suggest.
Well, maybe there's only one small thing that I would like to add regarding, like, right now the impact of COVID, and then also the effect how we can actually go to do field work and so on. So luckily, like, what I can say is that I'm not sure, I don't know whether how feasible it is, but right now actually traveling in places like China has already quite recovered quite okay. So previously, what we mostly do is we take students to Africa and so on. But obviously, this year we cannot do this. So what we are trying to do is, like, we try to do more like inside China traveling. And actually, what we realize is that in a big country like China, there are many things. No matter what we are talking about, conservation or community development and so on, there are a lot of issues that people can get to research and get experience with. And even if you want to maybe work in Africa in future, I believe like experience working with, for example, human-wildlife conflict in China could potentially help you to get a job regarding human-wildlife conflict in Africa, like in future. So what I was saying is that usually I'm a kind of like very realistic kind of person. So when I know experience is so important, then I would try to see, is there anywhere in any way I can get experience that is closest to what I wish to have, and maybe compromise in at some time to still try to let you have the experience and then try to grow a little bit. That's maybe a little bit thing that I can add.
Oh, fantastic. And to follow upon, we had a question as well for you before the session started today. A student in her university years and is interested in doing an internship abroad And there are now a number of kind of quasi-volunteer internships that are out there, right, with organizations where you pay them to intern or you pay them to volunteer for a semester. And it's a little bit overwhelming to vet all of these opportunities, right? How does the students wondering, how do I know that it's legitimate? How do I know that it's not going to be kind of, I won't be useful, or I'll be taking work away from someone local? What would you suggest for those students when it comes to getting abroad in the way that Jane got abroad? But how would you recommend to those students that they vet those opportunities when they don't have kind of the background?
Thank you for this question. What I would still say is to do research and to actually understand the situation. For example, if you are talking about internship that you should pay to be an intern, that's not a real internship. If you are talking about a volunteer program that you pay and to be a volunteer, that's not a real volunteer program, I would say. So those kind of programs are more educational program and kind of like tourism program. I'm not saying those programs are bad, but I'm just saying if you are like joining like for example, like a volunteer tourism program, and then you think that is a real volunteer program, then you are getting into something that you don't actually know. A good volunteerism program could be beneficial to local community development and also skill learning of the participant themselves as well. But if you go in there without actually knowing what it is, then you have a lot of problem in your expectation setting and so on and so on. So what I would suggest is that this person should spend more effort to actually try to understand better about how this area work, to understand, like to try to see the nature of different kind of like those opportunities, especially sometimes go beyond their marketing to see what they really are. And after that, they would be able to understand the nature of the program. For example, then, okay, we're talking about volunteer tourism program. Then, okay, which organization is more legitimate? Then we do some research to understand who is the founder of this organization and what has this organization done? Is there any review about this organization? And also maybe you can try to email the organization to understand what exactly are you going to do when you are there. You are going to just like every day just go to school and play with the children, or you are actually going to spend a lot of effort to prepare material and actually try to learn how to teach. So many programs, they look very similar, but indeed they are very, very different. Once you have the skill to like do better desk research and to know how to ask questions, or I would say how to interview, then you will get to know better about them. As long as you know enough about those programs, I'm sure this person would know how to choose which one is the best for her or for him. That's what
Fantastic. No, that's great. And May, to follow up on that, as someone who works a lot in connecting cultures, and I know at WildChina we have quite a few programs that involve students doing short-term volunteer work or short-term work in areas. What for you is kind of the key points to avoid having people come into situations they're not familiar with or doing work that they're not familiar with to ensure that kind of the local community benefits?
Could you?
Yeah. So what? So how do you prevent kind of white saviors from coming into China and having experiences that benefit them more than the local communities?
Okay, thank you. I think this is so important. First of all, I think a lot of the volunteer programs that we run are for fairly younger population and fairly short programs, right? We're not talking about 3 months, 6 months type of volunteering. I think those are better done on an individual one-on-one case situation with the organization, like what Huang was suggesting. In our WildChina programs, it's really more giving the students a sense of a flavor of what this kind of volunteering, this kind of life would be like. Is it in-depth enough to have, definitely not as in-depth as a 6 month, 2 year teach in China, teach for China kind of program, which I would love to do. To prepare the students before coming, I think it's most important. The teachers, the chaperones, and the students need to have a conversation and say, our visit to this country is not like us, what is the word, sort of looking down at this local culture. The reason the world is so interesting is precisely because of diversity. When we talk about diversity, is whatever culture you are visiting, is as beautiful and valuable to contributing to the diversity of the world as our culture is. It doesn't matter. Maybe I'm from, a very poor, I don't know, a poor country somewhere, visiting New York. I should have the confidence and not to be intimidated because my culture is contributing to diversity. It's the same as the one from New York coming to visit me in Kenya, right? I think introducing this concept, this appreciation for diversity, the respect of the areas that you are about to walk into, and come with the humble humility to learn, you will gain a lot more than walking in there and thinking, I'm the savior coming in to teach you something. And I think that's what life teaches us later on, by throwing a lot of obstacles in your way, and you realize, yeah, that's what we learn out of life.
May I just add a little bit to this question as well? Sorry.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, sure. So because for our students, actually a lot of the time we would realize that happened actually. Recently we have a student, like she is going to like a village in Guizhou. So we were doing like mock interview, mock preparation for her to better understand the situation. And then I asked her to introduce herself, and then she says something like this: "Hey, I'm Jessica. I'm here to help you." So those kind of situation is what we really want to change, because, and then what we would do is that first, what we do is we prepare like a video courses for those participants that they actually need to study a lot of courses before they come. And inside those courses, we need to teach them a lot of concepts. For example, white savior, like this concept for us may be very familiar, but for a lot of people, they may not be familiar with this at all. So we actually will explain to them what is this white savior complex, and why at the very beginning, some people, they went to Africa and helped them feel like they can save Africa, while they end up actually creating a lot of trouble for Africa and so on. So we need to share a lot of this kind of like experiences, like, and knowledge for them to better understand the situation. I think that's very important for them to prepare. And secondly, what I would say is that what they see themselves is also very important. We ask our students, you don't go there like feel like you are a volunteer. No, you are not a volunteer. What you are is a learner. You are there to learn. So once they see themselves as a learner instead of a volunteer, then it's much less likely they feel like, oh, I'm going to save this place, I'm going to change everything. No. So what they see themselves, I would say, is also very important. And lastly, as like Meg pointed out, so what we would say is, what we would also educate them is help them to understand like the diversity of like world and different culture and so on. Especially for a lot of Chinese students, we have this problem. Like we feel like, okay, China is more developed than Africa. So of course, so when we go to Africa, we're there to help Africa. We try to teach our students, no, don't see the world as developed and not developed and so on. The world is not like with a hierarchy, like some countries are better, some countries are worse. No, we're just different. It's not like some people are lazy, some people are more hardworking, and hardworking is better than lazy. No, it's not like that. So we try to prepare the students with a lot of like courses for them to understand themselves. We feel like for someone to really learn about sustainable development and how they can be part of it, this kind of like courses and learning is really important for them before they go. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
No, brilliant elaboration. And then Shelley, we're going to jump to you for the last bit about this. I know that you said one of your focus areas is on the local community. And when it comes to sustainability, being sensitive to the local community, what can travelers do? What should they know when they're coming in to do that, kind of to the points that we've been touching on? Is there anything to add that that travelers should be thinking about and people should be thinking about when they approach communities?
I would say, and just say, I think this discussion has been really great, and I think, you know, part of forming good travel stemmed from seeing many volunteerism programs in the world that you know weren't really taking the local community into account, and where it was quite imbalanced. And we were like, okay, we can see that there's many travelers that want to, you know, the intent is good, but then, you know, what actually happens when they go on these trips is actually quite negative. So we were like, okay, we need to somehow support people where the intent is good to have a positive impact. So just this discussion is really good. But I'd say what we try to do, because we or also not the experts in communities, and many of the communities that we visit. So we try and find a local partner on the ground who is within that community, that runs programs within that community, and then we let them take the lead in terms of, okay, we have travelers, we're bringing a group, what activities should we do? What does the community want to show us? What activities are they offering? And then we follow that, as opposed to us coming and say, oh, we want to do this, we want to do that. And we find that helps us navigate those spaces well, and as well for the traveler. And I think traveling outside of the group, traveling within as an individual, I think it's that research again of, okay, let me do the research within the community and find organizations that have these sustainable values and that are really taking the community into heart. And because I think, tourism can be a great income generator for communities. So there's a real positivity there, but it's about putting those tourism dollars in the right places, I think.
Fantastic answer. So we're getting towards the end of our time. And so I want to do a few things to wrap up here. First is remind everyone of our fantastic partner, Roots and Shoots Beijing, and to give everyone a sense of what Roots and Shoots does. They're the Jane Goodall Institute, and they believe that the future is in the hands of the world's youth, world's young people, and a lot of the things we've talked about today. And their program is committed to the understanding and preservation of wildlife and our living world through the education and empowerment of youth. So when we'll send a follow-up email. I'm sorry, I know everyone gets a lot of emails. We're going to send a follow-up email to everyone with a WeChat code to support Roots and Shoots to purchase their merchandise. Please, if you want any of their amazing things and to support a lot of what we've been talking about today, please, please, please support Roots and Shoots. They are a fantastic organization. And we'll make sure when you get your follow-up email, and we'll also include a link to this presentation. So if you want to share it with any students in your life, please, the more people that, especially the more young women that can be helped, the better. And so to wrap up today, though, what I would like to do is ask each of our incredible panelists to just give us 2 to 3 sentences on how your final words to young women on getting abroad. What is the most important thing to getting abroad? And then also, as a fun treat, if you could tell us when COVID is done and you can travel freely again, what is at the top of your travel list? We have kind of professional travelers here, experts of the world, and I think everyone is dying to know what's at the top of the travel list. So a brief couple of sentences about your final words to young women looking to get abroad, and then your travel destination, your go-to travel destination. And we'll start with Hong, if you don't mind.
Sorry, my internet was just a little bit stuck. Can you repeat the question?
Yes, no problem. If you could give us your final 2 sentences on your words of encouragement to women to get abroad, and when COVID is over, your travel destination that you most want to visit, the top of your list.
On top of my list, like, what I would say is that I would just say, just go wherever you really want to go, because I feel like for most of us, when we were very young, like, we definitely have some places that we wish to go. I'm sure everyone has, but a lot of the time we feel, oh, it may be too dangerous, it's too far away, it's too expensive. But once we do a lot of research to understand the situation and to explore the possibility, we will realize, no, we actually can get there. And for me, like, what I would say is that, like, when it comes to the places I want to go more, I will always say, like, the Amazon rainforest. That's my favorite place, like, in this whole world. I have been to Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, and so on, but I have never felt I have gone in depth enough. So for me, that's the most amazing place in this world that I would like to explore. Yeah.
Fantastic. And we'll jump to Shelley.
So I think the note I would leave with is, I feel it's going to, finding ways to travel and get abroad will probably be easier than you think, and the opportunities will come in many different ways. I guess a note, and sort of given what COVID has done to our world as well, a note would be that it can be very tempting as well to go abroad and to take lots of opportunities abroad, but it's still so very important to stay connected to your roots at home and your communities at home. And if you craft a life abroad, working overseas, creating that support network around you that you might miss as you go abroad are also really important, I think, for your well-being and success. And I think for me personally, top of my list would be South Africa, because at the moment it's very hard to get there, unfortunately, with COVID. So I'm looking forward to getting back there soon when I can.
Fantastic.
And can I add one more thing? Sorry.
Of course.
I was just going to say, if people are looking for, for some experience or just some knowledge, please also know you can reach out to Good Travel, because we love getting sort of passionate, eager minds to volunteer and intern and work with us in some way. So please know our door's open.
Fantastic. And we'll finish with May.
Okay. Well, I had the luxury to jot some notes while you were talking. So I think I'll share 3 points. The first one is, I think doing sustainable, don't do sustainable for doing sustainable's sake. Doing sustainable because it's better. You enjoy it and it's better for the world. Take that mindset and just do better. Then you will do well. I think the financials somehow will come. All 3 of us are standing here, and even in COVID, we're still here. All 4 of us actually. So that's message number 1. 2 is, a lot of times when you try to get into these starting in sustainable world, it can feel daunting and lonely. You're never alone. Whatever problems that you're encountering, someone else has encountered before, right? Look for sources. One is read. I think Jane Goodall's biography, I haven't read one, but I'm sure there are tons. There are tons of inspiring writings by John McPhee about the Alaska National Parks. Will just, light up your flame to explore. So go to books and go to TED Talks. Always inspiring, and then you won't feel alone anymore. So that's my message number 1. Number 3, your question of where I'm going after COVID. I'm going back to Yunnan. I'm going home. Definitely visit my parents. And if anyone to travel, I think the most sustainable way to travel is to travel slowly and spend time locally, appreciate the local culture. You will see it a lot more. Like, you will get a lot out of it, and have fun with it. Thank you all. It's been a delightful conversation. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, May, and thank you to all of our panelists. I have thoroughly enjoyed all of this, and I hope all of our attendees have enjoyed today as well. To wrap up as well, I am going to display the Roots and Shoots QR code for their WeChat store. So if anyone is able, I would very much encourage you to go to the Roots and Shoots store. They are a fantastic organization. You can read more about their organization this way. You can scan this code with your WeChat, and like I said, we'll also send some follow-up information about Roots and Shoots and their mission and what they do in empowering China's youth and global youth in the future as well. Fantastic. So with that, I want to thank everyone, thank all of our panelists. It was absolutely fantastic today. I really enjoyed it, and thank you all for being here today, and thank you to our attendees.
Thank you. Take care.
As well. It was so nice.
Stay healthy, stay well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'll share that QR code for anyone who wants it further.